So we have officially hit 500 trips since I started hosting on Turo. So I wanted to take a minute, go through all of those trips and give you the top 5 worst experiences that I've ever gone through in all of our 500 trips since we started hosting on Turo. So let's get into it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. So big milestone for us hosting on Turo. We have officially hit 500 completed trips, and I wanted to take a few moments and kind of go back through some of those trips and tell you some of the top 5 worst experiences with guests that I have encountered in all of my 500 trips. Now, majority of those 500 trips were uneventful, very good trips, good experiences with the guests. The guests had a good experience with me as a host. Out of all 500 of those trips, only 2 were rated at 4 stars. All of the rest of them were a 5-star experience. So if you are looking for a car in Jacksonville, go to AtchooRentals.com. I promise you, you will have a really good experience. And if anything ever is to happen, I am always willing to work with you. So definitely give us a try if you are looking to travel. So I'm gonna start with the least bad experience. We'll go into a few of them and then we'll talk about the most terrible experience that I ever went through hosting on Turo, so stay tuned for that one. So the very first one that I want to talk about is one that happened actually fairly recently. There was a renter that came and picked up our silver Corolla. As far as the overall experience, as far as the way the car was when it was returned, everything really was fine except for one thing. The car did have a chip in the windshield. So we had to talk to the renter about getting the chip repaired. The renter overall was not very happy with the experience from the get-go. Even the attendant in the airport did tell me that he called this experience a few, colorful names, and that's fine. This experience isn't for everyone. So as I mentioned, the chip was in the windshield. We got it repaired. He ultimately paid it and then basically told me that he wasn't happy with the experience. Then he left me this review that was right after paying for the windshield. So the timing of it was a little bit off to me. It really made me think that the experience that he was writing about was because of the fact that he had to pay for a windshield. I'm not gonna lie, I gave a little bit of a piece of my mind because I do ask guests in the middle of the trip, is there anything that I could do to help? Or is there any feedback that you have for me? Nothing was given, so I assumed that the trip was going well, so this really caught me by surprise. The guest then responded with a lot of colorful words to me. It wasn't very nice, but at the end of the day, that review did end up getting removed. I don't know if Turo removed it or if the guests removed it themselves, but at the end of the day, nonetheless, you don't really like dealing with guests who are going to be coming at you and telling you negative things that really are not true. The next experience that I wanted to talk about, number 4, was the situation that I talked about a couple weeks ago involving our Toyota RAV4 and the fact that the guest had driven well over 100 miles an hour in this car and filled it up with the wrong gas. If you didn't watch that video, I will include a link to it in the description, and I'll leave a link to it on the top right here so you can click on it and check out that video. But long story short, the guest really did not treat this car very well. It did have to go to the dealer. It did take about $1,000 to repair everything with the fuel lines, to drain everything out, to put the new fuel back in, but they put E85 in the car, and the car is not a flex fuel. Definitely not one of my most favorite experiences, and to top it off, they also smoked in the car. So even to this very day, it's been probably about a month and a half, and there are still remnants of what I had to do in order to clean it. When you run the ozone machine, it does kind of smell a little bit funny, and that is still there. Number 3 on the list, I'm gonna say, was when the Dodge Journey was crashed. And I also have videos of that experience. You are welcome to click those. I will leave a link to them in the description. But basically what happened was the guest was rear-ended and we had to take that car into the shop. It was about $7,000 worth of repairs that the car needed to have done. The bumper was dented, the taillights were broken, there were badges that needed to be reordered. There was a lot of stuff that needed to go into fixing this car and getting it back on the road. I took you through that whole entire process, so I invite you to check that out and see what that's like if you do deal with a car in a car accident. The car was gone for 2 months, and so that was lost revenue, and you know, you have to work hard to make that up if you lose it. So one of the most memorable in terms of, you know, the least fun. Number 2 on the list involved our Jeep Renegade. Now, it was October of 2021 when I picked up that car, and trip number 1. It had never been on a trip before, and this was the very first one that it had gone on, and the car reeked of weed. And we had to remove all of the seats out of the car. We had to clean the carpets with the extractor. We had to put everything back in. And even then, weed is very hard to remove, so it took a very long time for that one to finally get completely cleaned up to the point that it did not smell anymore. And that can happen. I mean, that was trip number 1. That was not like trip number 7, number 10. It was literally the Jeep's first trip. And that's how I remember it going out for the first time, unfortunately. Now, I'll give an honorable mention before I get into number 1. A couple of them that come to mind involved the Toyota Corolla. The Toyota Corolla, there was one time when it came back and it literally smelled like fish, and I cannot explain to you why it smelled this bad, but we even went through and extracted everything. I mean, we cleaned it, but it literally smelled like it had been sitting on the beach in the water for an extended period of time. But it wasn't wet, nothing was like that, but for whatever reason that car just smelled absolutely atrocious. And even now, I mean, that kind of scarred it a little bit. It smells fine now. We're talking, this was almost 2 years ago, but it still kind of altered because the car has fabric and carpet and stuff like that. It didn't smell the same way it did after that one. And another one involving the Corolla was when it was in a car accident in March of 2022. There was a driver that was pulling out and they ended up getting hit. As far as the guests themselves on that particular rental, never really had a problem with them. They were very communicative. They let me know what happened that night. So I really didn't have a problem with the guest. And even when they returned the car was very clean. There wasn't any issues other than, of course, the fact the car was damaged. But if that guest were to come back and want to rent with me, I would probably rent back to them again. And then another one involving the Jeep was when I had rented to a local renter and they brought it back and the back carpet was very wet. And never really figured out what that was, but there was a video that I posted where we discovered underneath the carpet that whatever had gotten that carpet wet in the back was still there, and it was leaving a really bad smell. And so we ended up cleaning all of that out, and ever since then the car has been in good shape. Now, the number 1 most terrible experience that I had ever gone through, it involved weed again, and this time it involved the Journey. This was well before the Journey had been in a car accident. This was in February of 2022, and we had a local guest that picked up the car. They borrowed it, I believe, for a week, and when it was brought back, it literally smelled like it had been hotboxed in. That took probably 2 months to remove that entire smell out of the car. Meanwhile, guests knew about it after they had picked it up because, I mean, I don't know if anybody that's watching this video has ever done it before, but chances are you're not getting rid of that smell overnight. So it took a very long time for that to get cleaned up, unfortunately, and that's just part of the business. That's part of what you're gonna have to deal with, is you're gonna have guests that will abuse your cars, and you have to be prepared for it, and you have to know what your plan is going to be when the car comes back for you to get it back to being 100%. As I said, it probably took about 2 months for that to get cleaned out completely. So it wasn't very fun, but again, it just comes with the job. Now, business is super busy, so we are actually gonna be driving this car in a little bit up to the airport, and I wanted to show you some of the fun joys of owning a van and renting out a minivan to families. So if you take a look in here, yeah, that is pretty bad. I mean, you got goldfish, tortillas, I mean, you name it. And then even if you go into the back here in the trunk, there is just a ton of sand, and it is pretty disgusting in here. Yeah, just take a look at what's going on back here, and you can definitely see. I mean, this car was used, and this was only a week. So, you know, again, something that you're going to have to deal with when you have something like a minivan on your fleet. Now, some people will ask, well, Joe, can't you get a cleaning fee for having to clean something like that? Turo's terms of services, if you are able to vacuum that, then you do not need to get a cleaning fee. The only time you will get a cleaning fee is if the carpet is stained or if there is any sort of like bodily fluid that ends up on the carpet. There are specific things that they state are qualified for you to receive a reimbursement. That, unfortunately, is not going to be one of them, which is fine because I know what I need to do in order to get that clean, and I can get it done pretty quick. Now, that is going to do it for today. Apologies for the sound. Somebody's getting a roof done over in the house down the street. Now, 2 weeks from now, I want you to pay attention to the next video because I'm going to take you through the entire process of booking a car on Turo, all the way to picking up the car and finally dropping it off at the end of the rental. So I want you to watch that, and if you are new to Turo and you want to know what the experience is like, stay tuned for that video because I'm going to try to be as comprehensive as I possibly can be with that. So keep an eye out for that. And that is going to do it for today. Again, if you are looking for a car in the Jacksonville area, we have cars filling up like crazy this summer. So please go to AtchooRentals.com. We have everything from small compact cars to what will become, you can't see it in the sun, a beautiful minivan. Thanks again for watching, and please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you like this content, if you like following our business and our journey. Thank you again. Have a great day, everybody.